In a remote Alaskan village nestled among towering evergreens, winter arrived with an unforgiving chill. The landscape was transformed into a vast expanse of white, where snowflakes danced in the frigid air, settling thickly upon the earth. It was here, in this isolated community, that tales and gossip flowed as freely as the hot coffee served at the local general store. The townsfolk gathered each day, exchanging stories, sharing laughter, and indulging in the warmth of camaraderie, all while eyeing one peculiar man who had drawn their attention. Jacob Finley, an eccentric homesteader, was known for his unconventional ideas and spirited independence. He lived alone in a modest cabin on the outskirts of town, where he cherished the solitude and beauty of nature. This winter, however, Jacob had embarked on a project that stirred a mix of curiosity and derision among his neighbors. With unwavering determination, he was constructing massive walls of snow around his cabin, a sight that elicited skepticism and laughter from the onlookers. "Look at Jacob," one neighbor chuckled, shaking his head. "What's he thinking? Snow walls for insulation? He should just buy proper materials like the rest of us." The laughter was infectious, echoing through the streets as the villagers clustered around the general store. They exchanged knowing glances, their faces lighting up with amusement as they witnessed Jacob's unusual endeavor. "I bet he'll be freezing in there before long," another remarked, stifling a giggle. Despite their mockery, Jacob pressed on, his resolve unwavering as he shaped the snow into towering walls. He measured each block meticulously, ensuring they were thick enough to provide protection from the harsh winds that howled through the valley. To him, this was not merely an absurdity. It was a calculated risk, one he believed would yield results. As the days turned into weeks, Jacob's snow walls began to take shape, rising high around his cabin like fortifications against the bitter cold. The locals continued to scoff, asserting that his methods were foolish and unscientific. They were accustomed to traditional means of insulation, relying on wood and modern building materials, but Jacob was intent on proving that nature offered viable solutions if only one had the courage to explore them. "Jacob's gone mad. That's what," a young woman named Emily remarked, her brow furrowed in concern. "He'll be sorry when he's trapped in there with nothing but snow to keep him warm." Yet, as winter deepened and the temperatures plunged, Jacob remained undeterred. He was fascinated by his experiment, believing that the very snow the others deemed a nuisance could serve as a barrier against the biting cold. He had observed how snow, when compacted, held heat, a principle he hoped to harness to keep his cabin warm. Little did his neighbors know that this seemingly ridiculous idea was about to be put to the ultimate test. As the frosty grip of winter tightened, the village experienced a dramatic drop in temperature. The mercury plummeted to -30°F, -34°C, and snow began to blanket the area like a thick, heavy quilt. The wind howled outside, rattling windows and sending shivers through the walls of conventional homes. The townsfolk, bundled in layers of clothing, struggled to keep their houses warm. Fuel costs skyrocketed as they stoked their fires, desperately trying to combat the relentless cold. Meanwhile, within the confines of his snow-walled cabin, Jacob felt a sense of calm. He lit a fire in the stove, the warmth radiating through the small space. To his delight, he began to note the differences in heat retention. The internal temperature of his cabin remained a cozy 68°F, 20°C, despite the frigid air outside. He measured the temperature diligently, documenting his findings, thrilled by the stark contrast between his situation and that of his neighbors. Curiosity soon turned to concern among the villagers. They began to wonder if they had underestimated Jacob's unconventional approach. As they huddled together, sharing stories of their struggles to keep warm, they couldn't help but glance toward Jacob's cabin, which stood resilient amidst the snow. The laughter that once filled the air began to fade, replaced by whispers of intrigue. "What if that madman is onto something?" one elder mused, scratching his chin thoughtfully. "Perhaps we should take a closer look." As winter continued its relentless assault, Jacob's snow wall stood strong, a testament to his belief in nature's abilities. The neighbors, initially reluctant to acknowledge his success, began to gather outside his cabin, curiosity piqued. They watched as he went about his daily routine, marveling at the simplicity of his method. Jacob had unwittingly become a figure of fascination, a pioneer in their eyes, as they began to reconsider their own approaches to survival in the unforgiving Alaskan winter. This was just the beginning of a remarkable journey of discovery and survival. If you are intrigued by Jacob's story and the innovative ideas that arise from necessity, join us on this journey of exploration and ingenuity. As winter descended upon the remote Alaskan village, the landscape transformed into a desolate white wonderland. The air turned biting cold, and the thermometer plunged to a staggering -30 degrees Fahrenheit, -34 degrees Celsius. Snowflakes danced like delicate feathers, settling heavily on rooftops and blanketing the ground in a thick, oppressive layer. Jacob, however, remained inside his cabin, a small sanctuary amid the relentless winter storm. His snow walls, which had once been a source of ridicule, now stood tall around him, acting as a shield against the harsh elements. While villagers bundled themselves up in multiple layers of clothing, struggling to maintain warmth in their conventional homes, Jacob felt an unusual sense of tranquility. He had always believed in the power of nature and the wisdom it offered, and now he was eager to see if his theories could withstand the test of an Alaskan winter. With the fire crackling in his stove, he noted the cozy warmth emanating from within his cabin, a stark contrast to the frigid air outside. As days turned into weeks, the townsfolk faced mounting challenges. Fuel prices skyrocketed as they burned through logs and heating oil at alarming rates, each attempt to stave off the cold proving more futile than the last. They huddled together in their homes, discussing the latest methods to keep warm. Yet their efforts were met with only modest success. The wind howled outside, rattling windows and sending cold drafts through the very bones of their houses. Complaints filled the air as they lamented their misfortunes, casting worried glances toward Jacob's cabin, which stood resilient and unfazed by the winter's fury. One particularly bitter evening, as the icy wind whipped through the village, a group of neighbors gathered outside Jacob's home, their breath visible in the freezing air. They whispered among themselves, their voices tinged with curiosity and skepticism. "How can that man be so warm when we can barely keep our fires going?" A burly man named Thomas wondered aloud, scratching his beard in frustration. "We should go see for ourselves. Maybe he's found something we haven't." Reluctantly, they made their way toward Jacob's cabin. As they approached, they could see the snow walls standing tall, glistening under the faint glow of the moonlight. Their initial laughter had faded, replaced by a sense of intrigue and bewilderment. They knocked on the door, and Jacob, surprised but welcoming, invited them inside. The moment they stepped through the door, the warmth enveloped them, contrasting sharply with the biting cold outside. Jacob, beaming with pride, gestured for them to sit by the fire. "Welcome! Come in! Come in! Let me show you what I've been working on," he exclaimed, the excitement evident in his voice. The villagers settled around the fire, casting wary glances at the snow walls outside. "We thought you were mad," Emily admitted, her voice tinged with admiration. "But it seems you've made it through the worst of the winter without any issues." Jacob nodded, eager to share his findings. "You see, snow is a remarkable insulator. When it's compacted, it can trap heat and create a barrier against the cold. I've been measuring the temperature inside my cabin, and despite the extreme conditions, it's a comfortable 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius, in here." The others exchanged glances, their skepticism slowly melting away like the snow under the sun. "How is that possible?" Thomas asked, genuinely curious. "We've been burning through fuel like it's going out of style. Our homes are freezing." Jacob smiled, sensing their shift in attitude. "It's all about understanding how materials work. Snow, when used correctly, can be more effective than traditional insulation methods. It's not just about keeping the cold out. It's about managing the heat inside." As he spoke, the room buzzed with interest. The villagers leaned in, eager to learn more about Jacob's innovative approach. He explained how the snow walls created a microclimate, trapping warmth and blocking the biting winds that normally penetrated their homes. His neighbors, once mockers, now hung on his every word. "If we could incorporate this idea into our own homes, we might be able to save on heating costs," Emily mused, her mind racing with possibilities. "Imagine if we used snow to insulate our foundations." Jacob's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "Exactly. It's not just about my cabin. It's about rethinking what we know. Nature has its own solutions, and sometimes we just need to be open to them." As they sat around the fire, sipping hot cocoa and sharing stories, a bond began to form, one built on respect and newfound understanding. The laughter that once filled the air was replaced by discussions of innovation and practicality. Jacob had inadvertently sparked a movement, inspiring his neighbors to rethink their own survival strategies in the face of nature's harshness. If you find this story fascinating, give us a thumbs up. The winter was far from over, and with Jacob's success as a beacon of hope, the villagers were eager to explore new ways of survival, driven by the understanding that sometimes the simplest solutions can yield the most profound results. As the winter progressed, Jacob's determination and ingenuity continued to outshine the skepticism of his neighbors. The snow walls he had constructed around his cabin stood firm against the relentless Alaskan elements. Each passing day, they witnessed the fierce winds whip through the trees, sending flurries of snow cascading down. Yet Jacob's cabin remained a beacon of warmth amid the harshness. Remarkably, his snow walls not only held up but also seemed to grow stronger, forming an almost impenetrable barrier against the chill. By January, the temperatures had dropped drastically. The village was experiencing record lows, plunging to a staggering -30 degrees Fahrenheit, -34 degrees Celsius. The biting cold seeped into the bones of the townsfolk, forcing them to huddle around their meager heating systems, which struggled to keep their homes warm. The laughter that once echoed around the general store had been replaced by a palpable tension. Conversations turned serious as they discussed rising fuel costs and the ever-present threat of frostbite. One evening, gathered once again in the flickering light of the general store, the townspeople began to share their increasing concerns. "I don't know how much longer we can keep burning through firewood like this," Thomas lamented, his brow furrowed with worry. "If this keeps up, we'll be out of fuel before spring even arrives." The others nodded in agreement, their faces drawn with concern. Outside, the wind howled like a tortured spirit, and the cold crept insidiously into every crack and crevice of their homes. It was then that a young woman named Emily, who had previously mocked Jacob's methods, spoke up, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Have you seen Jacob? His cabin seems... well, it seems like it's doing fine." The group exchanged skeptical glances, the memory of their unkind words hanging heavy in the air. It was true that Jacob had managed to stay warm, and now curiosity began to replace the derision. "Maybe we should pay him a visit," Emily suggested tentatively. "Perhaps he knows something we don't." So, under the cloak of night, with the biting cold nipping at their cheeks, a small group set out towards Jacob's cabin. As they approached, the sight was striking. The snow walls, now towering and majestic, sparkled under the moonlight, casting an ethereal glow around the cabin. The warmth radiating from within seemed almost inviting, despite the frigid conditions surrounding them. Knocking on the door, they were greeted by Jacob's cheerful face, framed by the cozy glow of the firelight. "Welcome! Come in, he said, ushering them inside with genuine hospitality. The contrast between the warmth of the cabin and the icy air outside was immediate, wrapping them in a comforting embrace. As they settled around the fire, Jacob observed the mixture of awe and embarrassment on their faces. "You all look like you've seen a ghost," he chuckled, attempting to lighten the mood. "What brings you here on such a cold night?" Emily took a deep breath, her voice steadying as she spoke. "We wanted to see how you're staying warm in this weather. We've been struggling, and it seems you found a way to keep your cabin cozy." Jacob smiled, recognizing the shift in their attitudes. "It's all about the snow walls. They trap heat and create a kind of insulation that keeps the cold at bay." He gestured towards the walls. "If you look closely, you can see how the snow acts as a barrier. It's not just about keeping the cold out. It's about managing the heat inside." The villagers listened intently as Jacob explained the science behind his unconventional method. He shared measurements he had taken, revealing that inside his cabin, the temperature remained a surprisingly pleasant 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius. The townsfolk exchanged glances, their skepticism melting away as Jacob discussed the effectiveness of snow as an insulator compared to their traditional heating methods. As he spoke, curiosity transformed into excitement. "If we could harness this technique somehow, we might save ourselves a lot of trouble," Thomas mused, his mind racing with possibilities. "Imagine using snow to insulate our homes. We could cut down on fuel costs significantly." Jacob nodded, encouraged by the newfound interest. "Exactly. It's not just about my cabin. It's about rethinking how we approach winter living. Sometimes, nature provides the answers if we just look closely enough." The group spent hours discussing ideas and strategies, the atmosphere buzzing with newfound camaraderie and respect for Jacob's insight. They began to realize that their initial laughter had obscured a valuable lesson, one about humility, innovation, and the value of unconventional thinking. As the night wore on, one by one, the villagers began to share their own experiences and ideas, inspired by Jacob's ingenuity. They laughed together, not at one another, but at the shared struggles they faced against the unforgiving Alaskan winter. Eventually, as they prepared to leave, Jacob invited them to return whenever they wished, encouraging them to experiment with his snow wall technique in their own homes. "Let's learn together," he said sincerely, "and maybe we'll all find a way to thrive this winter." The villagers left Jacob's cabin that night with a renewed sense of hope. They had entered as skeptics but emerged as collaborators, eager to explore the potential of Jacob's idea. They returned to their homes, invigorated to try out the concept, motivated by the belief that sometimes the simplest solutions can lead to the most profound changes. Share your thoughts on this invention in the comments below. As the weeks went by, others in the village began to adopt Jacob's methods, learning from his experience and finding new ways to survive the winter. The once skeptical community transformed into a supportive network, united by the shared goal of thriving in the face of nature's challenges. Jacob's snow walls became a symbol of resilience, reminding everyone that ingenuity often lies in the most unexpected places.